Hi there, crafty friends. Welcome and thank you for joining me. Today we are going to use Spellbinders' brand new retro suitcase and sentiments. This is a stamp and die set. You get 12 stamps and 15 dies. April is Mental Health Awareness Month, so this is a set they came out for that. And there are some great sentiments in here. We've all got baggage. Together we can carry it. Friends help friends carry their baggage. Friends and laughter help lighten the load. It's okay. We've all got baggage. Sometimes we carry a lot. Let me help you. And this is just a great set. So let's get started. We won't be using all of the dies, but we are going to use most of them. I've got the main body of my suitcase here, and I cut that out of Cascade. And then I lined up the two dies and I created my border. That was cut out of Truffle. I've got our straps. I had to cut that twice. We've got our two handle pieces, our corner pieces, and there is also this additional little corner piece that you can cut and lay over the one piece to fill in the little holes. But I just went ahead and cut little circles, extra circles, so we will inlay those. We've got our buckles, our little tag or the chain for our luggage tags, and I did heat emboss hearts on that prior to cutting those, so I just heat embossed that in white. And then we've got another little metal piece here. So let's get started with some ink blending here. I want to have a little bit of a distressed look, so I'm bringing in Hero Hues Nautical, and we are going to add shading to the main part of our suitcase here, and I'm really just going around the corners. And I do want this to be pretty dark, so I will rotate this and go around several times. I don't necessarily want to change the color of my Cascade cardstock. I just want to add a little bit of a distressed look to it. So now we are also going to add a little bit of distress to our handle piece here. And also to our corner pieces. So now with those pieces ink blended, let's go ahead and we're going to bring in our Spellbinders 3D embossing folder. This is fresh picked floral frame. And I am going to selectively choose a place on here that I think will look really nice on my suitcase. So I'm just going to move that around in this corner. And then I will run that through my die cutting machine, and I'm using the Platinum 6. And because this is a 3D embossing folder, I will be using the A platform base and my D adapter only, and I'll run that through. And then we've got a floral image on our suitcase. So now what I want to do is I want to add a little bit more distressing to that. I'm going to bring in my Dove White and just take that pad and just rub it all over the top of my embossed piece. And that's just going to make us be able to see those raised areas just a little bit better. So now I can start assembly. I will add my border there. And then I will also attach my little corner pieces on top of that. And at the same time, I will go ahead and I will assemble my handle just like that. And I will add my straps. So let me get all that glued together for you. It is pretty simple. Assembly is pretty self-explanatory, but there are little pieces. And I did want to make sure to adhere my little corner pieces before I adhere my straps. That way I can get them nice and centered and spaced out nicely. And then on our corner pieces, I've got a whole bunch of little gold dots cut out, and I just cut that out of gold cardstock. Of course, you could take the layering piece and cut that out, but I like the inlay look, so I made things a little bit difficult for myself and I just cut those out. I'll put a little dot of glue inside each little corner piece here, and then I will add my gold dots. Then we can add our handle, and anytime you adhere something to foil, it does take just a little bit longer to set up. So we'll just nudge that right under there and then let it be for a minute so that can dry. So while that dries, let's move on. We need to think about a sentiment. So we need to bring back in some more ink blending. I've got another piece of Cascade cardstock here, bringing back in my nautical, and I will just ink blend all on the bottom right here, just like that. I want to make sure that I go up probably about 3/4 of an inch, nice and dark, so it matches our suitcase. So now with that all ink blended, we want to hit this with our heat gun just a little bit because we're going to heat emboss. And anytime you add that much ink to something, it does stay wet for a little while. So we're going to hit this with our heat gun for a second. Then we can place that in our MISTI. I do already have my stamp lined up. We will be using Friends Help Friends Carry Their Baggage, and I've got that centered. I want to make sure that I use plenty of powder on here because I don't want embossing powder where it doesn't belong. So what I like to do first is I will hit this with some white ink. I will stamp that twice with white. And then I will also bring in my Versamark and I will just stamp that again. I want to make sure I get really good coverage with that sticky ink because we're embossing in white and I want that to show up really well. And then I can take this and let's get some white embossing powder on there. And now I will hit that with my heat tool. And I like to heat that from the back. It just seems like I get a more even heat on that when I do it from the back. Now I am going to trim this piece to 3/4 of an inch. And then we can start building our card. So I've got another panel here. This is just plain white hammer mill. This is cut to 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. And I also went ahead and I ran that through that same embossing folder. And we need to figure out how much we need to trim off of here because my card is going to be layered. And I'm going to have a stripe, a brown stripe there, which is truffle cardstock. And then I will have my sentiment at the bottom. And I want this to be about 4 inches. So let's figure out how much we need to cut off from our white embossed panel. So right now I'm at 5. It looks like I need to cut off about an inch. Let's see how that is. Then we will just place these up against each other right now so we can make sure we measured correctly. And that's perfect. That's at 4 inches. So that will have a nice border. So now let's take a couple pieces of double-sided tape here. And we are just going to add a little bit of tape. Right now, I just want to get everything lined up on there perfectly. So we'll just add a little piece of tape down there. on one end and a little piece on the other. Then we can bring in our colored pieces and get those attached. I just want to make sure everything is nicely butted up right there. We can even add another one in the middle like that just to keep it in place. Then we'll bring in our sentiment. We will get that nice and lined up. That looks good. Now I can trim off my edges, and I find it easier to just put this in my trimmer and just trim like that. That way it's nice and perfect. I hope everybody is doing well. It's warm here. It is very warm, unseasonably warm. All right, so let's go ahead and finish our card. So I forgot, I want to add a little bit of distress to my white piece here. So what I'm doing is I'm just bringing in that same brush we used. I'm not even going to add any ink to it, but I'm just going to ever so gently run this brush over those embossed areas. That way we can get more detail out of our flowers. Now let's take a look and see what we think. Oh, I think that's going to be beautiful. We might want a little bit more ink over here. So now we can go ahead and assemble our card. I have a side folding card base here. I am going to add foam tape behind my panel and then also behind my suitcase. So before I take the foam tape off the back of my suitcase, I need to be sure to add my little strap here for my luggage tag. Then we can add our suitcase, and I did add a little piece of foam tape behind that handle also. And I will just try to center that as best I can. And I think we'll use the luggage tag that is more of a triangle at the top instead of the rounded one. I will use a thick foam square behind that. And actually, you know what? Let's move that down a little bit. So we've got our thick foam square on there. We're just going to line that up. We can stick that down, and then now we can take just a little dot of glue and adhere that strap, and that card is done. I added a few Fashion Cosmic gems to that just to accent my background. I think it came out perfect. I love that sentiment. Friends help friends carry their baggage. And then I've also got one here that I did, and I turned my suitcase the other way. So we've got a tall suitcase and a short suitcase, and you can lengthen your straps with just some selective die cutting. Then another one here. I wish I would have added some ink blending to the background. It would have stood out just a little bit more, but those came out very nice. Don't forget to check on your friends. Everything I used today will be listed and linked in the description below. Please give me a thumbs up. Please leave me a comment, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.